we're live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our July Baseline General Assembly, where we will go through our updates from the community. And today we will go through outreach updates, sponsorship, core devs, the TSC and roadmap updates, grants, where we will have some grant recipients give us an update on their work and hopefully a demo as well. Then standards, and then we will have an open floor. So with that, I will first hand over it to Mark Haddle to give the first of our outreach updates.
Okay, well, the first of we've been working on within the outreach team, and we've kind of split into a couple of little, side work groups dedicated on, basic research as well as, market updates as far as, how this would, you start to put together a solution stack around baseline. And to that event, to that point, we're also covering different events. We have been approved as a speaker for the FinTech DevCon that's going to be held in Denver, the 23rd through the 26th of August. And we are added to the main stage. Our time slot is at 1:40 p.m. on that Thursday, the 26th. We're still putting together a lot of behind the scenes work on that, but really good to have this type of this reach and exposure for baseline. I'll be giving the talk. So this is and the thing about FinTech DevCon is they are very adamant about that this is education heavy. This is not really a place for sales pitches where everybody's trying to talk about how their product is better than everybody else's. These are processes and techniques that we use to advance different technologies, and baseline has been very enthusiastically received. So also upcoming events, Oasis is going to have a booth at Black Hat in August. And they're going to be, really representing Oasis and the suite of their open projects, which baseline is one of the key ones there. We also have some upcoming Gartner conferences, and we're really starting to distill down where we can, find out where we can have the most impact for baseline. So, watch this space to see how we go forward. And then, of course, we've also applied for speaking slots for the big DevCon in October, which is that in New York?
In Bogota.
Bogota. Oh, that's right. Bogota, Colombia.
Bogota.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So applying for speaking slots on that, still, putting together a lot of these submission materials and stuff there. So we will see how that moves forward. But, we've been really excited, to be selected for this FinTech DevCon in Denver in August. So that's what we've got going on right now.
Awesome. And I'll give an update on the IDC report. So we have a few community members working with the IDC team on a custom report on multi-party automation, which will be used to gather data and analyses around the problems that baseline can be applied to or related to. And the report will be funded by multiple sponsors that also address the topic of multi-party automation. So we're doing some outreach to these companies that have different products around this problem or topic, and seeing who wants to be part of this report, because the sponsors will get to assist in designing the study to make sure that we cover as much ground as we can with this report. And we do anticipate that this report will have a large reach once it is published, because it is the first of its kind on this topic. We did a lot of digging beforehand to find a resource similar to this for our own materials that we're creating and have not. So that is why we are moving forward to fund our own within the baseline community. And we hope this report will be complete by the end of the year. So far, we are on track. So we'll continue providing updates on the IDC report. Another outreach item is a discussion we recently had was about new member onboarding and some updates we can do to the website to have a really solid landing page for new members that are directed to our site, because we are creating new stickers and collateral with a QR code to our website for our events coming up this year. So we want to make sure we really address what people are looking for when they enter our website. And also, I will hand over to Mark Rimza for some updates on our work groups within the outreach team.
Thank you. Yeah, Mark mentioned there are a couple work groups going on right now. The first one is the research work group. We meet every other week, and we're working right now on a group effort, which is the Alternative Baseline Solutions Matrix, where we're comparing and contrasting various services and protocols. Some of them included our EDI, trusted third parties, value-added networks. These are all being compared to the baseline protocol based on some of the key categories that baseline comprises, like if it's blockchain based, the network decentralization it has, its interoperability, data consistency, the public key infrastructure that governs the identities of the system. This exercise is very exciting, and as we further develop it, we're hoping to have a one-pager or output that we can serve as a resource for other people who are trying at a quick glance to see what really is the baseline protocol, how does it stack up to other solutions or protocols that are out there. And we have a research grant also going on that has been proposed, and we're going to cover this a little bit later in the General Assembly here. And finally, the next work group is the enablement work group, also meets every other week. And in this work group, we've created a persona matrix identifying the types of people that might be interested in learning about the baseline protocol, the types of decisions this person would make, for example, if the implementation is worth spending money on, or the benefits of interest, like what the data reconciliation savings would be if they're interested in that. And the questions this person would ask, like, how does this impact my existing infrastructure? And this matrix is going to be used as a reference for what resources still need to be created within the appropriate lens of the personas that we're targeting for the protocol. And we hope to get some good deliverables out of this in the future. And on top of this, our group is working on a master enablement deck that can be used to highlight the overall value proposition of baseline using data. And we hope to share this deck in the future on a future baseline show and publish it on the website. And another deliverable that started is a business executive brief. And this will ideally become a one-pager also for business executives whenever they're making the decision to implement baseline or not. And I'll pass it back over to Sonal to talk about sponsorship.
Awesome. Thank you. Are there any questions from the group on the efforts happening in the outreach team? Alrighty, and I will cover sponsorship quickly. Carol Geyer from Oasis is unavailable for the call today, but the outreach team is working on increasing baseline sponsorship by connecting with companies related to the technologies or uses of baseline. So we are working on a prospects list, and Carol is reaching out to these companies, explaining the protocol and why they should be interested. And I will hand over to Yoav for a core dev update.
Yeah, thank you, Sonal. So the major, I guess, piece of development that the core devs are working on right now is the simple reference implementation, or the SRI, which is kind of the main focus of the roadmap for the end of this year. So this is currently being developed by a team of core devs that meet weekly. They've split the work into the initial phase of 5 separate components, being ZK, BPI, subject and account, work groups, messaging, and storage. So the team is currently this week working to evaluate each of these components and create a proposal for how these components can be implemented, which they will then present to the other team members. Tomorrow, I believe, is that meeting where they can provide input and everybody can decide how to move forward. And once that meeting concludes and everybody is able to get their proposal approved by the rest of the group, efforts will begin to implement. So that's where the real development work will kind of kick off. To track all of that, there are issues that have been already opened in the baseline repo, which is public for anybody to see where we're at. And moving forward, that's where we'll keep track of everything. We'll be opening issues as well as grant requests for anything relevant to, big enough pieces of work that's worthy of requesting a grant for. And that way the TSC can also keep track of where the roadmap progress is being made. Finally, the last thing I wanted to mention is that one of our core devs, Vaibhav, who is on this call and will kind of get a chance a little bit later in this call, is working on the baseline calendar still, which is a blip that originated from the Amster-based bounty hunt event. And so I think a little bit later in this call, he'll get a chance to demo what he has so far, which is I'm excited for.
Awesome. Thank you. Any questions for the group on core dev updates? Alrighty, now I will hand over to Samrat for any TSC updates.
Thank you, Sonal, and thank you so much, Mark, and you are Mark. I think it's hearty to listen to all these updates, and especially on the monthly general assemblies. Amazing work is going into building baseline as it stands. We are definitely looking for more. So as the TSC, I think I can just, on the behalf of the TSC, I can just thank you guys first of all. Keith, I saw your recent proposal on accountability of all the proposals which are coming in. I think that's amazing. How detailed, how it should be captured. So that's cool. And then specifically on the TSC updates, first thing, very importantly, we've hit mid of the year. July is like the second half, and then so we should be focusing on disbursing all the grant money that we have. So once again, request for all, do participate in the grant proposals, and do chime in. If you can bring in any sponsors, nothing like it. The bigger the pool, the more opportunity we have to build this thing better. So that's all from my side. Anything that I missed, Sonal?
Nope. Thank
Super.
you.
Really excited about the IDC activity going on.
Yes, me too. We can use your help there as well.
So,
Awesome. All right, and we will move into grant updates. So one of our grant recipients, Boy, who is working on the website maintenance, was unable to join us today, but the outreach team is working with him on a second iteration of the website with updates to the UI, UX designs, and overall messaging. So if anyone on call or listening would like to be interested in this effort, please join us. We need some creative minds on this. And then also we have Vaibhav with us today, who is a baseline core dev working on the calendar grant. Thank you for joining us, Vaibhav, and over to you to give us an update and a demo.
Yeah. So so I would like to first of all tell that baseline calendar is going on good. So the basic idea was to create a calendar, like Calendly, like application, which would allow people to schedule appointments in such a way that protects their privacy. And I will go ahead and quickly share my screen. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, so I would, I will just quickly go ahead and give the demo. I'm sorry about this. I should have.
No worries. It's fun to watch.
John lives for watching people type code.
Hey, should we do a code don't lie?
Yeah, almost.
Yeah, whose is
Okay.
that power? Lambda.
John's got all the power
John's
of
got
the
the power.
special effects power.
I think Yoav is on Restream.
Yeah, I've got the code don't lie power.
Go ahead, man.
Yeah, it'll just takes few seconds. I just delete it. So initially, the user would have to register, and yeah, this registration would happen via MetaMask login. So this API would give something like this, and and a person can confirm. Basically, these are the number of users. So I just created one user, which was this user. I will just log in. So in order to log in, yeah, just give me a second. Yeah, so in order to log in, I need to create this signature, which is based on basically MetaMask signature. So in order to create this signature, just give me, I would have to go with my Ether wallet access. Yeah, basically I would have to sign it. Wait just a second. Message, sign a message. Wait, no, I would have to sign a very specific message. So I'm signing one-time nonce, and so the current nonce would be, so right now the nonce for get all users, the nonce is just one. So I would have to sign it as the current nonce is one, and depending on the request, it will change it. So I will just. So once this is done, it would give me an access token, which is a JWT access token, which I would have to pass in next APIs. This is valid for 45 minutes. So after 45 minutes, it would automatically expire. So this would be the epoch value of all the times he's available and all the time ends that he's available. So this would be 1/6 something something values. So now two time availabilities are created. And this would on the front end side help get the time availability of the person, given the right bearer token is presented. So these two, and yeah, so the request is for scheduling an appointment. So once I would have to go ahead and create another user, and also create time availability for that specific person, and then I just match the time availabilities And yeah, so that is also done over here. And yeah, yeah. Uh, so this specific part is kind of a small part is the scheduling part is appointment part is left, just the post API. Apart from that, everything else is done from the end. So appointment scheduling is still pending, and the circum circuit is what uh, I'm working on. So that's about it.
Awesome.
The front end part would be the next stage of this, and just finishing the appointment API and the front end part. So go ahead with this.
Got it. Any questions from the group for Vaibhav?
Actually, I have a question. So what was the can you maybe like reiterate the two things? Reiterate sort of like the basic idea behind it, because people who are watching might not be, intimately familiar with that. And then secondly, what was sort of like the most challenging thing you've encountered so far?
Okay, so there are two things, so there are two aspects. So the idea was that, let's say that person A is available on three things, say three specific time schedules, and person B is available on three different time schedules, say 8:30 to 9, 9:30 to 10. So the idea was not to give the entire availability of person A to person B when he has to supposed to schedule an appointment with him. That's what the difference between this and so what the idea was to use ZK circum circuit and hide the information. Obviously, the statement here would be that the person can go ahead and use the system to brute force for every time availability, but then there would be certain trust that you would have to establish while you're giving the link to someone. So over here, what I'm doing over here is that anyone who goes ahead and registered on the website would go ahead and give their there would be a pop-up on front end, and that would give so this is the back end which I just showed. On the front end there would be a pop-up where it would go ahead and display different time slots, so 9 to 9:30, 9:30 to 10, something like that, and the person would go ahead and select 5 or 10 of these time slots when he's available, and that would register in the database, and the same thing would happen with the other person. And the matching part would happen via a circum circuit in order to see if yeah, so in order to see whether those are available or not. So yeah, that's about it. So these are so the idea is to protect the privacy of the person who is sharing the calendar as well. That was the basic idea, and the most challenging aspect of this was largely I think understanding how circum circuit works, and just understanding how ZK can be used in this application was like kind of challenging because it was very new to me. That's about it.
What was the idea behind using circum in particular and not any other library?
Well, so the like a lot of examples, like the baseline protocol, I looked at the battleship as a reference to my work, like the battleship code that has been already written, and I was able to understand that very well. So I just I found circum quick to learn and understand. At the same time, it served the purpose that was needed over here.
Excellent. Great example of how previous work is being utilized in new work. So it's just a proof that how important these type of efforts are.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other final comments or questions about this grant work? 2 thumbs up from Keith.
What's your, yeah, big thumbs up. What's your Twitter handle?
So my Twitter handle is VAIBHAVGEEK. I would just post it over here.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll throw it up on the screen if you can put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Alrighty, thank you. And we will be in touch on the rest of the grant work. Looking forward to seeing the front end. And thank you for being one of our newer baseline core devs and being so active. Alrighty, so with that, I will quickly go through the rest of the grant updates. So we do still have 2 open RFPs for the digital asset wallets. We have 1 open grant request for the first RFP that's being discussed with the TSC and the requester at this time. And we are encouraging those who want to make a valuable contribution to the blockchain ecosystem to make a request for this work so we can get it accounted for as soon as possible in this year. Any further comments on that, Andreas, on the 2 RFPs?
Sure. We've already put that on Twitter, LinkedIn. Those are very important pieces of work because they allow you to do 2 things. Number one, they allow you to be compliant with the standard for a non-custodial solution between DITs, and so integrating DIDs and verifiable credentials. And on the other hand, EDDSA signatures or keys are super important because they're utilized in the zero knowledge circuits. So if you want to generate those proofs on your side, rather than relying on someone else to manage your keys, which is typically not a good idea, then that's critical as well. And I have an inkling that enterprises are not really keen on third parties managing their private keys. So it is badly needed, not only within the baseline community, but in the blockchain community at large. And the EF is very keen on this being done. And yeah, so we call out, go. It's like there's stuff out there that already exists that you can build on that is relatively straightforward to do.
And Andreas, with that, what level of experience or competencies would be suggested for those interested in this grant?
Understanding how DITs and VCs work, be familiar with some of those implementations that exist out there from company like OpenBazaar and Transmute, and it's like be familiar with what the work that's being done in the Decentralized Identity Foundation. And on the one hand, the other hand, it's like Node.js, right? It's like because any current open source digital asset wallet relies on that. And then for the other grant, yeah, you will have to understand, EDDSA signatures, even though there's a lot of implementations already out there that you can, steal from. And it's just putting stuff together that already exists in one solution. So it's you don't have to really build anything from scratch.
Awesome. Thank you. And the last grant update is that we have 2 other grant requests in the queue by the same grant recipient. One is for hosting the baseline show going forward, to line up speakers and topics, as well as do follow-up after the show to those who join us. And the second one is for conducting research around the protocol. So we'll work directly with the research work group, and hopefully those grant requests will be updated and approved in the coming weeks. And Last but not least would be our standards updates. So over to you, Andreas.
So Andreas need his third cup of coffee.
Yes. Andreas, are you still with us to give a standards update?
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Give me. Sorry, I'm doing multiple things at the same time. I apologize. It's unfortunate, but that's my life. Yeah. So standards update. There's still one PR out there, calling on John Wolpert to look and approve. Part of your job. Wink, wink. That has sort of like the final editorial additions to the draft, and so that's one. The other is that work coming out of the SRI is there will be a new issue, and then subsequent PR on the API standard. So which is great because people are now starting to look at that as well, which is awesome. You know, there was a very much hot needle effort, and you know, was sure that things were to be missed, and now that is borne out. So this is awesome that we have you know, Onion and Stefan and so forth looking at that.
Thank you. Any questions on standards from the group? Alrighty. So really quickly, we will have an open floor. And then with the remaining time, we're officially going to do the segment that has been discussed in the past on going through singular requirements in the standards and talking through it and seeing what questions we have and just discussing each standard that exists. And we'll see how many years it takes us. But let's start with an open floor. Are there any updates from anybody here in the community on other items being worked on? Or projects or news in the space? Samrat, you always have something.
I have
So-
an update on the Baseline India show. So we are going to be hosting the Hyperledger gang tomorrow on the Baseline Show India. And yeah, I mean, I don't have Kamlesh yet, but I have Srishti who will be joining us tomorrow. So I'm going to be posting on social media as well very soon. So any of you who are interested to join in, please do. I know it's pretty early in the US, but still, we'll try.
Who's running Hyperledger these days? Brian's gone.
Danielle,
It's the India gang.
Oh, okay.
Srishti, yeah, she's the
Well,
co-lead.
I haven't looked into Hyperledger in quite a while. It's interesting.
So I have one additional update, which is a really positive one.
Yes.
The W3C DIT-core spec was approved. The objections by Google, Mozilla, etc., were overruled, and the DID spec is now an official W3C specification, which is a big thing, because now this is an official standard, together with the Fair Public Credential standard, is the foundation for everything going forward around being able to tie identities to digital assets in a way that allows not only for compliance but is also imminently scalable, without having to rely on third parties. Like
That is big
basically,
news. And that specification doesn't require blockchain, right?
it does not per se require blockchain. For security reasons, you would want to, because you need to have a provable sequence of used keys.
Right.
That's critical.
Yeah, how's
That's
NIST,
critical.
how's NIST coming down on this, or are they weighing in at all?
They're not weighing in at all. They're like, they don't
Interesting.
give two hoots about it.
NIST did just publish, I just read this morning that NIST is coming out with pretty full-throated approval of post-quantum encryption standards. I think, what is it, dilithium and Kyber and a couple others.
They have a competition ongoing that's now in the final round for the algorithms to be selected that are considered to be post-quantum secure, which is going to be a big deal. B is gonna spur a lot of work and spending in the IT industry, because you have to change everything, and I mean everything.
Yeah, that's going to impact this industry quite a bit. The other thing I read this morning is that
Trillions of dollars have to be spent on that over the next
this may be
couple of
the
years.
most exciting thing I've read recently is that MongoDB just published queryable encryption, meaning that you can search at high speeds at production scales. And they're just putting out their open source and a demo of this tomorrow, or maybe it was Tuesday. That allows you to basically query data sets without decrypting them quickly and at scale. This is a big deal. In fact, I really could have used this years ago when I was running the Innovation Exchange, where we had data sets from many different companies and we wanted to find various things between them, but we couldn't expose the data sets to each other. Very exciting and relevant to what we do here. Same topic, Gary, at least. They're not using blockchain, but
that's correct. It's like, if you're the key question is what's the provenance of your encrypted records? Again, it's a question of your root of trust. That's all.
Yeah, but you know what? This is something, since I've begun working on the baseline protocol. Yeah, let's be honest. I mean, yeah, it is a most of the time, applications don't care that much about super heavy duty non-repudiation protocols, where there's just no way to spoof it. If I'm querying your database and I know, I'm fine, right? So, but I love the idea that, again, if we're talking about orchestrating multi-party automations without exposing data, which is, to me, the most interesting and important thing about baselining these days, is that is very much aided by something like that with Mongo. If you can do that, right? Because then you can make a query from one state machine to the other without exposing the data and say, well, I need to know that this happened. I need to be able to search this date range for something without requiring the other party to reveal the data to me in clear text. Big deal.
Interesting. Any other comments on this topic or others? All right, let's go through a standard requirement. Super fun. All right, so we're going to go through all the requirements in order, just so we can keep track of where we are. How many requirements are there? That's my question.
300, I believe.
Over 300.
Cool.
R's, and then there are like 60 D's.
Yeah.
and like 40 conditional requirements.
Alrighty, let's get to it then. John, I don't think you're at your station, but I was hoping you would read it in your requirement reading voice. But if not, I can just stumble through my words reading it. All right. Requirement 1. Transacting counterparties must have an agreement specifying minimally the transactions to be performed between the transacting counterparties before a transactable state of an agreement can be instantiated within a BPI. Note that an agreement in the context of this document may or may not be a commercial agreement as defined in requirement number 24, commercial agreements below. All right, so can we talk about what this means or what questions we have about this requirement? And I will paste it in chat as well.
Got
Well,
it.
first,
Thank you.
can you share your screen? It's probably best when people can actually read it themselves, especially for those on the stream.
Yoav, any chance you have it up?
Yes,
I just memorized it.
I have it.
Just kidding, but my notes are ugly. Thank you.
Yeah, you have all the standards memorized, don't you,
Yep.
actually?
It's a little secret I've been keeping.
We should have a corner where we just say our random number and you
Yeah.
say it from memory.
Okay, hopefully this is the right window.
Looks good to me. And R1.
R3, R2.
All right, just saw it. Here we go.
There you go. There you go.
All right. I'm sure there are some questions, or if anyone wants to explain it, what it means.
Do you want me to go about it?
Yes, please.
Sure. So so we're already at in 2.3. So there's some stuff that it's about talking about counterparty, right? So transacting counterparties, or Alice and Bob, right? They're trying to make it very, very specific. There's Alice and Bob, and they must have an agreement, right? So an agreement has they have agreed on rules, right? And these rules need to specify minimally, so at least one rule, the transaction to be performed between them, right? So if Alice pays Bob, there must be an agreement that says Alice pays Bob when X is true, right? When it's like Alice has received the good from Bob and confirms it, right? That is before a transactable state of an agreement can be instantiated within a BPI. That means if you want to do something, if you want to implement that logic in the BPI, such that your baseline implementation, baseline protocol implementation, can use that logic, right? The two counterparties must have defined what that logic is, right? They must have come to an agreement what that logic is between Alice and Bob for Alice to pay Bob. And once that is there, then you can implement that rule in the BPI. If that's not there, if they haven't agreed on it, you can't implement it. Hence, this very first requirement. And an agreement can be informal or it can be formal, obviously.
Okay, so what you just mentioned. So I was under the impression that it had to be like a legal agreement in place, but you mentioned it could be informal as well.
No, right. Note that an agreement in the context of this document may or may not be a commercial agreement.
Got it. Any questions or comments from the group?
Yeah, we get this question a lot. How do you, in your mind, imagine these parties going about really, coming to an agreement? Of course, that part's kind of obvious, we did already, but then taking that from, making the agreement to like a codified version of it.
Yeah, so that's the art, right? That's how you translate the agreement, the logic, the business logic that's encoded in there in words typically. How that is translated to typically a constraint within a zero knowledge circuit. Right. So that how do you implement that? And on the one hand, on the other hand, it also then specifies what type of data needs to be stored or needs to be made available in terms of to agree what a state is, right? So what is the state, in our example, prepayment and then post-payment, right? Because you might have yet another payment happening because there was yet another exchange of goods between Alice and Bob, right? And that might, so it's not necessarily a one-off, right? You very often have the situation where you have long-running contracts that basically say the same thing and that runs over a year or two or three, and you're processing hundreds of commercial transactions through that agreement, right? Which means you need to be able to keep track of all the states, so one builds on top of the other, right? So it's a very foundational thing, not only for one-off situations, but for it's like long-running contracts or agreements.
So what do you think the process will look like in real life when we get a large amount of parties coming together? They have an agreement and they decide to put it into code, and then they all have to like sign off to say, yeah, this what we've codified, this is what we all agree on. That's just,
it's the same way how you sign off on like an SAP implementation and how a business process is implemented in SAP. You have the actual users. They have to sign off on, yep, that's it. And then there's going to be a test, right, that you define on around that business users can check that, oh, yep, that's for that expected input, for this input, this is the expected outcome. Yep, that works, all good.
On the, I would say that on the, when you get into commercialization of this notion, it becomes, wouldn't you say, Andreas, more published rules, right? So you don't have to de novo set that rule up every time. You can say, hey, look, you're coming into our orbit. You're going to be doing this thing. Watch for this location on the blockchain or on this CCSM, and here's the rule that you have to test for, right? So that so you can do that setup, and that rule set can be published as opposed to, a bunch of back and forth de novo setup every time.
Yeah, ideally you have one operator for BPI, and then it's like you have participants.
Almost be
and
like
just
publishing an API. You can say,
yeah,
here's
it's
an API, or could add this to your API. Yeah, you could say, here's your API, and whether you implement this in DIDs or in traditional API, you could say, here's the set of requirements, here's the rule set, and here's the circuit.
There's actually there's an API for that actually in the standard. Just like get objects, so you can specify which object you want and you can get it.
So that's how I think it would be practically applied most of the time, as opposed to like calling back and forth between two or three counterparties to say, hey, we're all going to agree on that. Alice is going to do this, then Bob's going to do this, Charlie's going to do this, right? You can say, any Charlie can come in and say, hey, I'm new Charlie. I need to be sure that Alice and Bob, new Alice and Bob's did these things, that they have consistent information, that the part of that information adheres to this requirement. X is bigger than Y, and if so, then I will do my thing.
I think we have Boris in the call now. Hey,
Yeah,
Boris, how you doing?
I couldn't.
Got some burning questions.
Not questions, just some input. I think this is really great because I think I do a lot of requirements writing, and I did in the past quite a bit on counterparties. So that's really gives you a very good path. I mean, actually writing the detailed requirements or the contracts between the counterparties. I would think that could be very, I mean, this seems to be like very helpful. I mean, you'll need to ask. Yeah.
This reminds me, Boris, of back, in the early days of baselining, I was very keen to see open law, which was still open law in those days, and not, DAOs and LAOs and stuff, which, obviously was a good pivot for them. They made a lot of money. But open law and clause were both going after this idea of sort of DocuSign meets instrumentable agreements, right? And the clause actually was bought by DocuSign. A friend of mine, Dan Selman, ran that, and he got bought. Good for him. But I haven't seen a lot since then about this. But I still think that that's probably how this happens in the future, right? And that's how, if I was building something right now that needed this, I'd want basically to have a DocuSign, have the back end of that DocuSign have instrumentable code, smart contract or circuits, be rendered into circuits, so that I could then just simply sign the DocuSign and agree to both the human language agreement and the circuit requirement, right? And then implement as I will, right, with an API. In fact, I think it'd be a huge opportunity for DocuSign.
DID.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, DID. That's the whole point.
Either a new DocuSign competitor or DocuSign itself, I think would find this to be very powerful and lucrative. I just don't know how far up on their roadmap this
integrate. You can directly integrate the DocuSign API, right? So you can have an endpoint in your document for that kicks off a DocuSign workflow, and you just hold that commercial relationship with DocuSign. It just kicks off a DocuSign workflow. Very simple.
What clause would do is generate. It would generate the actual code. The executable part of the contract. If so and so does this, then so and so.
Yeah. That's
then you could, and then to interpret that into zero knowledge circuit would be the next step, and that could all be one single workflow.
Oh yeah, I mean yes, but that's to parse commercial agreements is unless they're plain vanilla and translate that into implementable ZKP circuits. That's a very long leap.
Clause was all around DSLs, right? So domain specifically, and so you could, so I mean, it was just generating DSLs off of specific clauses, right? And then you could pick, match and mix them, and so you could see from a DSL to a circuit is a relatively short step, depending on the.
That is true, unless lawyers change that DSL significantly, which is typically what happens.
Yeah, there is that. So the first.
I think you started breaking up, John.
Sorry, I was done.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for that discussion, and thanks for talking us through that requirement. Super fun. We got through one, and that's honestly what I expected, but this was an awesome General Assembly. Thank you to our viewers as well as those on the call with us today. And we will see you next week on our baseline show. Thank you.
One every meeting,
Woohoo!
330 meetings.
It'll only take like
And-
11 or 12 years.
We have
Pretty-
had significantly
And do
more than
not-
that number of meetings so far.
Yes.
And do not forget, hashtag Andreas is Lambda.
Hashtag Andreas is
Yes.
Lambda.
I have a ticker at the bottom of the screen now that just reads Andreas is Lambda.
Alrighty. Have a great
Perfect.
week. Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.